Hey, my name is Gabriela Castro. I am the Executive Director of Global Chamber Querétaro. And we are very happy to be today in this event with a very, very polemic topic. So the Global Chamber Querétaro, in collaboration with the Forest attorneys, proudly presents an exclusive and timely presentation titled Understanding Foreign Investment under USMCA. This session will be led by two legal experts, Rodrigo Marquez and Rodrigo Vasquez, both from the Forest attorneys, recognized in international trade and foreign investment law. I want first to give some time to Doug, who is the CEO of Global Chamber, before beginning and before introducing both of our speakers, to give some words to all people attending. Thank you, Doug, for accompanying us.
Oh, my pleasure, Gabriela. And thanks for those who are attending here today and maybe watching this on later, the recording. This is one of those topics that's really critically important. And it's changing. It almost feels like daily. So I'm very anxious to hear more about where we are today and how that works. I really appreciate the work by DeForest attorneys and your leadership on this topic. Hopefully you're getting some sleep amidst all of these changes and getting some good rest. You know, the world right now is full of challenges. It's more full of opportunities. It's giving us right in front of us as trade increases around the world. The shifts combined with that are creating more than sleepless nights, certainly some anxiety, but also some smiles, because those people that are in the know, those people that pay attention, those people who understand like the information we're going to be sharing today are going to be well equipped. Generally, people make money during times of change, and I, in my lifetime, have never seen the changes like that are going through today, and probably none of you have either. The world, the geopolitics is changing, the laws are changing, and it's changing day by day. And so stay in touch, be part of Global Chamber and be part of the global tribe. It's never been more important to be part of the Global Chamber for two reasons. Number one is to keep up. Number two is to maintain your sanity, because you shouldn't be watching the news, ideally. You should be tapping in occasionally to that and then paying attention to what the global tribe, the grounded global tribe, is all about, and be part of the supportive network. And so, Gabriela, thank you for being part of that supportive network. Your calmness, your expertise, your experience, and your bringing us together today is just one example, and a good example of what you do as a leader within our community. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Doug. And we are happy to be part of this big business, global business supporting community. Thank you very much. And I want to give like some minutes for Ivan Ramirez. He is our Deputy Director in Global Chamber Querétaro. So Ivan, could you please only give like a welcoming remark for people attending the event?
Of course. Thank you so much, Gabi. Good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rodrigo Marquez and Rodrigo Miranda. We are very excited to hear what you're about to share with us, because it's very, very important, meaningful for us, for every one of us, to know what's going on in this globalization, what's going on with Canada, United States, and our relationship, and with the market. So we are very, very excited to hear you. Thank you so much. And let's enjoy this meeting.
Thank you, Ivan. So I am going to introduce Rodrigo Marquez and Rodrigo Vasquez. Rodrigo Marquez, he is a corporate attorney who has participated in difficult and challenging negotiations related to corporate, financial, and mergers and acquisitions. He's an expert in mergers and acquisitions, real estate, corporate banking, and financial and foreign investment law. He is a partner in the Forest Abogados, or the Forest Attorneys, located in Querétaro, Mexico, since 2011, and a foreign legal counsel since 2021 in the Forest offices located in Dallas, Texas. Rodrigo Vasquez, he has played a significant role in high-profile mergers and acquisitions and has provided legal counsel for international investments in Mexico. Since 2013, Rodrigo has been an associate at the Forest offices in Querétaro, Mexico. Both are fluent in English and Spanish. So welcome to our event, and I want to listen to both Rodrigos on what they want to share with all of us.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for joining. We'd like to, first of all, thank Global Chamber and everybody involved in leadership in Global Chamber, Mexico and worldwide. It's been really an honor to being given the opportunity to share our point of view on this topic, especially at this times that we're living in. A lot of people living with a lot of uncertainty from foreign trade and transactions involving foreign trade. So, well, since I am in the United States, even though I'm a foreign legal counsel here, but it's important just to make a statement that this is not intended to be legal advice in any way for anyone, and shall not be used as basis for decision making. It's just a academic presentation and the share of our view of how this topic is evolving in the days that we're living. So with that disclaimer being said, also for Mexico, of course, shouldn't be intended to be legal advice. We'd like to start our presentation and share about this topic. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So the topic for this is understanding the foreign investment under the USMCA. I'm sure that people are familiar with what the USMCA is, formerly known as NAFTA. It's the commercial trade agreement between United States, Mexico, and Canada, hence where the USMCA acronym comes from. And through this presentation, we'd like to explore the compliance requirements and risks associated with the foreign investment that is carried out under the scope of USMCA. And we want to focus a little bit on the implications that any suspension or renegotiation of the USMCA might imply for parties doing transactions under the framework of the USMCA. So let me try to move this bar. Do you know? There we go. So of course, the USMCA has played a significant and I would say even underrated level of support and certainty in transactions between United States, Mexico, and Canada ever since it was in effect. It has been a stability mechanism for transactions and foreign trade. It was implemented in 2020, although it comes all the way back from 1994 when NAFTA was entered by these three countries. For those located in Mexico, you might probably remember that before 1994, foreign trade between Mexico and the United States and of course Canada was in a way restricted or limited or hindered a little bit by the cost of export and import between both markets. After 1994, when the Mexican economy was open, what a lot of academics like to say, the neoliberal age of Mexico, then foreign trade started to happen, and commercially and economically Mexico started to grow as a nation. Of course, the United States was already the largest market at that time. So this gave a lot of certainty to investors and started a huge wave of foreign investment coming into Mexico. As a matter of fact, the foreign investment law was also entered into effect at that time, and then later, with a few reforms, gave a better framework of foreign investment into Mexico, and that's when we started seeing this explosion of foreign trade between Mexico and the United States, and of course Canada. So why the USMCA gives such a stability for the foreign trade between these three nations? In a way, it gives this investor and state dispute settlement mechanism, which is extremely important for foreign investors and countries that support their companies going into another country to make investments. So this is a significant pillar of USMCA. The dispute resolution chapter of it is really well thought and well prepared. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's been some panels for discussions. Transgenic corn, for example, was just recently resolved after a few years, and it provides certainty for investment. No, so that's one of the pillars of it. Also, it has some protections under the Chapter 14. It has some protection for investors, but it's limited. So in that way, when investors go into another country to make an investment under the USMCA scope, they know what they're allowed to invoke as protection from their own country and what they are not. So that's also a really relevant pillar of the regulations under the USMCA. From a legal perspective also, and from a commercial perspective, it grants fair market access to these three nations. So what it pretty much means is that it's equally fair for the countries dealing with each other. Right now, we're experiencing, for example, the creation or imposition of some tariffs from the U.S. to the other two parties, and you've seen how some reaction. It's been outrageous for example, for Canada. That even though they are part of this USMCA, they were also threatened to receive tariffs on all their imports. Later on, the stance kind of changed a little bit. That's more on the politics side of it, but from a legal perspective, all the products under USMCA trade were exempted from this punitive tariffs, let's call them, by the United States. So if we think about it, if USMCA was not in place, Mexico and Canada and the region itself would have suffered a lot more than what actually has happened. And this is just because of the existence of USMCA. They are strong IP protections. This is a big deal. Right now, we're also, getting to know some facts about, for example, the products that are like high-end brands that have their production in, now we're finding out, if whatever allegations are true, that some of these products are actually made and manufactured in China, but then they're just sent overseas to France or Italy just for labeling. And the Chinese companies are saying, well, if we actually are making these products, we can just infringe IP protection and start selling these products for less price. Under the USMCA, that would be absolutely forbidden, and a large legal contingency would imply for any company that tries to do that kind of thing. There are really strong IP protections. Actually, the intellectual property chapter of the USMCA is one of the most restrictive in many ways. And finally, it grants the integration of the supply chain, which at this point in our economy, that it's a basic. If there's some sort of obstacle in the supply chain, then sometimes it could imply that a business would not be viable. So this is, in a way, the pillars of the framework of the USMCA, and that's why it's such an important tool for business being carried out in the region of United States, Mexico, and Canada. So what would happen if the USMCA is suspended, whether it's totally or partially, or it's not renovated? You know, there's a scheduled renegotiation of it for 2026. President Trump has said that he's actually trying to speed that process a little bit and do it before 2026. In my opinion, I don't see that something that is going to happen. We're already at almost half of 2025. It'll be hard to imagine that in a few months the USMCA would be renegotiated. But as we're seeing, many things that are totally unexpected could happen. So what would this create? Suspension or renegotiation or standby of the USMCA? First of all, like we're experiencing right now, trade and tariff uncertainty. So suspending the USMCA would result, I would change that word from the screen. Instead of could, it's going to be would result in increased tariffs, of course. And that will impact industries like we're seeing right now, the auto industry, agriculture, and many other things. Right now, there's this rush for people in the United States to, whoever was planning to buy a car in the next few months, they're pretty much trying to do it in the next few days, because they know that the increase in pricing for vehicles is going to happen eventually. So we're already seeing this uncertainty, what will cost. So of course, if there's more demand for a product, then prices will just spike up, and it'll be just outrageous prices for vehicles. So we know that that's one of the standards that the economy sometimes is measured with. No, that's really important. As you know, Mexico has strong tier 1, tier 2, and even OEM auto manufacturing in many regions. In the Bajío region, where our office is located, Puebla, and North Mexico also. So that would impact a lot of employment and commercial activity in Mexico as well. So that will be really chaotic for the region. Also, agriculture sector will be under threat. You know, the exports of corn, dairy, meat to Mexico will face also tariffs if the USMCA is suspended, and that would jeopardize the whole industry. The food supply and food safety industry there's many voices that have raised their hands saying we need to be careful with this because we don't know. We've been doing this since 1994. Now, if we start imposing tariffs, like recently about tariffs for tomatoes, for example, just imagine the impact that would have in the food industry. It will be tremendous, no? So this is something that, cars, oil and gas, and other products might be something that it's a commodity and we can deal with. But food is, as you may imagine, important, very important for the sustainability of human beings. So this has to be taken into consideration if USMCA is suspended. Like we said about the auto industry, we're talking about, here it says 2.5 to 25%. We already know it's going to be 25%. Could be more, depending on where the vehicles are from. So we need also we're experiencing how the markets reacted to these tariffs being announced. So that will also really affect both the region, the three parties in the region. If there's a supply chain disruption, then we would understand that there's going to start to be defaults in payments of credit lines and financial obligations from big corporations that depend on supply chain, because they won't be able to receive their payments or sell their products or services, and that would break the whole ecosystem of USMCA. So financial institutions will be affected. Even the tax authorities are worried about this, because that will imply a lot less revenue from taxes to the governments, especially in Mexico and even in the United States. So this is really important. If you think about, I was reading an analysis from the SMU School of Law here that they were talking about just the value-added tax that international trade creates in both countries. It will be trillions of dollars of uncollected revenue as of with the USMCA under effect. So that's also very important. Automakers, and not only automakers, but big corporations that are located on both sides or the three sides of the borders, Canada, USA, and Mexico, will have to go on process of major restructuring. As you can understand, most of these manufacturing plants are located in Mexico, which imply a lot of corporate and tax structure and corporate governance and tax planning and benefits for employees. So if USMCA is suspended and a lot of the things under the USMCA framework are not applicable, then these companies are going to have to probably shut down their plants, probably have to restructure their holding companies with their subsidiaries located in the other side of the border. And that will imply a lot of money in tax strategies and also tax structures, reporting, compliance, and so on and so forth. So you could imagine, and these restructurings may take years to happen. So this is sometimes they're so complex that it might take years to happen. So that will also have a significant adverse impact in the corporations. Of course, labor and environmental protections will, if it's suspended, then it will weaken the labor rights enforcement and risk investor confidence in labor standards and also environmental protections. There's a lot of environmental rules in the USMCA that apply to companies on both sides of the border, that if they're not under effect, then we have to go back to WTO rules, and those are outdated, to say the least, no? And they don't understand the reality of United States and Mexico trade. So that will be also something very significant. Recently, we were speaking at an event here at the AEM, the Association of Mexican Entrepreneurs in the United States. And one of the things that we're saying is, one of the panelists, he was probably in his 60s, and he said that he's always been into foreign trade. And what he said is, if you think about this, in 1994, then NAFTA came into effect. So there are not many professionals that know how to operate before NAFTA. So if the USMCA is suspended or even canceled, then a lot of people, they don't know how it used to work before NAFTA. From the professional standpoint, I'm talking lawyers, tax specialists, financial specialists. So it would imply pretty much to go back to school and try to understand what the rules are. So that's also really relevant to take into consideration. Also, especially between US and Canada, the energy sector investments will be at risk. We know there's a big issue with natural gas between United States and Canada, but also coming down into Mexico, you know, where oil and gas and refineries are, you know, Pemex recently bought a refinery in Deer Park, Texas, and they own the facility. So what will be the rules under that will apply to all that gas and oil and combustolio and all that things that are produced there? What rules would apply to those products? That's also really relevant, because Mexico runs on imported gas, as we know. So we know that Mexico has been trying to make some large public investments in oil and gas sector, but we all know that that's not going to happen. So that's also really important to have into consideration. And finally, the regulatory and compliance uncertainty would be immense. If you have recently been dealing with banks outside of Mexico or in the United States, you know that compliance is every day even stricter than it used to be. The KYC obligations and reports and FATCA obligations and all this anti-bribery, anti-corruption, anti-money laundering laws are in place. So if the USMCA has a chapter on this, and if these policies are suspended, then it will imply a lot of risk for compliance purposes that will put a lot of transactions at risk, no? So these are major risk and implications of the USMCA suspension. And from our perspective, what are our strategic recommendations at this point for investors to have in mind? If you're dealing with transactions that are, of course, cross-border, which I assume the audience will be, just be sure that you have good contractual protections, clauses in the contract that may safeguard against USA modifications and that actually contemplate what happens if USMCA is suspended. That would be something relevant. Try to enhance the dispute resolution of clauses. We would always recommend at this point especially to opt for arbitration-friendly jurisdictions or even arbitration clauses that are more specific on the process, because if USMCA is suspended, then you have to have a lot of detail on how arbitration would happen in that case. Also explore other trade agreements that would probably mitigate the USMCA risk. You know, the WTO and CPTP would be a good idea to implement into your trade agreements, especially if you're trading between USMCA nations. From a commercial standpoint, try to diversify your supply chains, not only depend on one market. I know that, for example, auto industry will pretty much always depend on the United States market, but if there's other industries, then try to diversify that and try to find other sources of clients and suppliers. That's also really important. Just as an example about this, in the automotive cluster in Querétaro that I was part of advisory board for a while, it took some of the auto companies that are in the region over 10 years to develop a network of suppliers, because especially tier 1, tier 2 in the auto industries or even OEMs, they need to work with suppliers that adapt to their needs and comply with their timelines and their quality and so on and so forth. So if right now you break this supply chain, that network of companies that was created for over a decade might just be totally unviable to do business with. And that will have significant impact, of course, in supply chain and supply and demand. Prices will go up, and so on and so forth. Nearshoring would be a good idea to try to minimize the exposure to these trade barriers. So if you have a market in Mexico and you can develop that market, or even from Mexico to another market, that this is a good time to try to look into that. Also, try to ensure compliance with the standards of USMCA, even though if it's suspended or negotiation process is taking longer than expected, always try to maintain the compliance standards of the USMCA in any intellectual property, labor, environmental, anti-money laundering, and anti-bribery laws, because if USMCA comes back into effect, of course, those rules are going to apply eventually. Prepare to go back to WTO tariff rates and the treatment for some products in case USMCA collapses. Of course, in the absence of USMCA, the WTO rules will apply. So you need to be familiar with, have your international trade teams and departments be familiar with these rules so they understand what would apply in case USMCA collapses. And try to restructure investment holdings and corporate structures and strategies that you already have. Try to look into that and see plan B, plan C, no, at this point. What is the, how can we enhance the business resilience with this uncertainty? First of all, we need to understand the importance of USMCA. So if you are part of a chamber like Global Chamber or any other chamber, or if you're part of any professional organization in your country, or you participate in forums where you're allowed to have a voice, make sure that always bring this up. Make your voice be heard, that the region is, the glue that attaches together the foreign trade between United States, Mexico, and Canada is pretty much based on the rules of the USMCA. So try to always bring this up in all this. If you can make a publication, so as much voices address this issue, that'll give a little more sense of the sensitivity of suspending the USMCA or taking longer than expected in the renegotiation of it. It's not a matter only of politics. This is actually a matter of commerce, and commerce affects jobs, and jobs affect people. So I think this is something important. Also, prepare for political risks. This is something that you need to be ready. You need to have teams that understand how the world works right now. It's amazing that one single tweet have such an impact in the exchange rate, the markets, and how people react nowadays. So be prepared and have a robust team of people that understand the rules and what's going on. Always be, like Doug was saying, watch the news, even if you don't like it. It's important if you have a business. Have a good and smart contract structuring. Talk to your legal teams or legal advisors and try to look into your contracts, how they look now and how they could look if USMCA is suspended. And try to prepare and talk to your suppliers and providers that you might have to apply some changes to the contracts that you currently use, because there could be some things that would not apply or will be outdated. No, that's also very important. Stay up to speed with compliance. Don't let your guard down on this matters. The penalties are high, and the United States government and the administration and even Canada might also be more strict in enforcing compliance violations. So make sure that you understand this and have a good team of compliance knowledgeable people. Plan for contingency. A little bit of the same line. You need to be ready for waking up in the morning. You read a newspaper and you see that USMCA is suspended as of now. What are you going to do? You need to have a plan in place, and you need to have advisors that tell you what to do. And finally, try to find these alternate trade agreements, alternate markets to diversify and mitigate the commercial risk and legal risk also. So please let us know if you have any questions. I hope this has been useful and in a way illustrative for everybody. If anybody has any questions, just please let us know, and we will be happy to hop in and help you. Of course, through Global Chamber, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to help.
To know if someone has Any questions on Rodrigo's presentation? Rodrigo Vasquez, maybe you have something to add. You want to participate also with Rodrigo to add some information because you are, Rodrigo Marquez is in Dallas, US, and you are in Querétaro, Mexico.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabriela. Well, basically, we are urging our clients to review their contracts to be prepared for anything, for any changes that might come in the next months or the next year if the USMCA is suspended or canceled. But mostly is that as things change and a single person, president or tweet is sent out to the public, things change a lot, and we as attorneys or advisors to our clients we have to be prepared for anything. So we just try to put this out to everyone to consider these changes, because most of people are like confident that no, this is not going to happen, but really times are changing and we are seeing it every day. So we just like to tell that take your time, review your contracts, your providers, your clients, see another opportunities, and of course, if you need any help or assistance, well, the Global Chamber and us will be glad to help.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And can you give us more examples, as you said, to be prepared with the contracts, to check the contracts, revise the contracts? Maybe you can give us some more examples how to prepare just in case this happens.
Yeah, well, any agreement that is executed and valid under the USMCA or the current law is just like the matter of how things have been working in these last, I don't know, 20 years. But if we don't check these clauses, then like for example, if you have a dispute and you need to go to the US and file a lawsuit, then there won't be any assistance, because under the trade agreement you have some facilities for that. But if we are under another kind of law or rules, then we need to check the WTO and how things works in 1994. But as Rodrigo said, there's not much information, and lawyers or financials or accountants are not familiar with how things work on that. So it's just a way to add or amend your agreements to add, if trade or exchanges move in a certain percentage, or this uncertainty in this in dollar currency versus pesos, to put some blocks or limits in the or ways to your company to not be affected because of these changes, because most of agreements that are now valid or in process or for many years does not have these considerations, and if you don't prepare, then these changes might be something that your company shut down because you cannot absorb the costs and the consequences of it. So it's just a matter of setting alternative disputes, arbitration, or any other clauses that can support a change, or if it maintains, like the presentation or Rodrigo said, you need to keep their standards and everything in compliance as it is now. But you can add some things up, you negotiate with your counterparts to add these changes. What happens if the USMCA is changed or suspended? Then we move on to this process and try to prevent any contingency about this. That's how it must be done. I don't know if Marcus has to add something.
Yes, and pretty much that. And also, we were talking in that other event, and they were saying, like, if today, let's say tomorrow, we wake up and USMCA is suspended, then what will be the rules of origin, for example? How would that apply for certain products? and because that has an implication on tariffs. So let's say that suspension happens today, and there's already a container in the ocean going into the United States. What tariffs are going to be imposed to those products, and who's going to pay for them, and how are the rules of origin going to be applied? We wouldn't know. So then, depending on the type of products, you might lose a whole lot of merchandise at just one moment because you did not provide any sort of alternative in the case of the suspension of USMCA, the contract. So I would say if you do international trade and you have a contract with suppliers or providers in the other side of the border, then make sure that you take a look at your contracts and start to review and see if you have any alternatives to USMCA suspension. Talk to your clients and your providers and your associates or partners or whatever it is, and make sure that you have a rule in place so you don't have to worry about that, and because it could take weeks to solve if you're not prepared. It could take weeks. So like I said, depending on the type of product, that will have a significant cost of warehouse, storage in the port of entry, fees to be paid for customs brokers, maybe penalties. Who knows? No, you need to really take a deep look into it, because we really don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people, like Rodrigo was saying, say like, oh, this is really not going to happen, and I mean the region depends on the USMCA, but to be honest, the United States administration right now doesn't necessarily see it that way. They actually see the USMCA as unfair. So as you probably know, any of the three parties can just pretty much just give notice with 6 months in advance and just walk out. So if the one that does that is the United States, which is the biggest market, then to be honest, when we just have to be honest, the Mexican economy will suffer significantly immediately. The United States also will suffer, but it's going to take a little longer for them to experience that. So Mexican companies, take a look at your contracts and try to solve any of those issues, because that could I don't want to exaggerate, but might put some people out of business.
Yeah. Question: what will happen for companies planning new investments in Mexico or the US at this moment that this is the uncertainty about the USMCA? What do they have to consider? The new companies investing in both countries, or companies that are already in both countries and want to invest? What should they consider at this moment?
I would like to answer this one and maybe have Rodrigo add something. But what we are seeing now, clients that ask that question, in the past, we would just go and check if there's any part of the USMCA under scope that would apply. Let's think just, for example, intellectual property. There's a lot of rules and regulations to that. So if someone is trying to make an investment in, let's say, technology, and it's an American company going to invest in Mexico in technology, and they depend on intellectual property software or any sort of tool that they might have to use, they need to check what is the USMCA framework and what is the consequence if that framework is suspended. So therefore, whoever is going to have access to that intellectual property in their contract, you need to establish both. This is the rules under USMCA, and this will be the rules if USMCA is suspended. That's the kind of preventive action that we would suggest, not only for intellectual property. I'm talking for labor, rules of origin, dispute resolution, always think this is under USMCA, and this would be, in case USMCA is not applied, WTO rules apply, then you need to make sure that you start looking into that scenario. And of course, that will necessarily imply, like I said, I don't know how many people graduated from the university before 1994 at this point. So I'm talking international trade, business majors, lawyers, accountants, tax specialists. How many of those graduated before 1994 that are still working? So if you don't have someone that has that experience, then you better start like going into that field and try to educate your team and understand how the rules were before 1994. Because we're talking about, what is it, 30 years, 31? It's a long time, right?
Yeah, I would just add that the companies would try to reach their experts in this case Mexico or the US, and probably check their own business, how the products or where will they come from. If your commercial will be based on either Canada, Mexico, if you're in the US, or vice versa. Well, it depends on how your business will be executed, or you will distribute your product. So I don't know, some of our clients are from France and are settling in Mexico, but they're not putting any parts or using the USMCA because their goal or their target is in South America or in Europe. Just the production is made in Mexico, so maybe there won't be any direct issues. But of course, if some of their processes are going to require services or anything, products export or import in United States or from Canada, of course, then things will, like Rodrigo said, you need an expert that knows how things work with it before NAFTA, and try to avoid this suspension or probable suspension, right? So it depends on the market target and the business itself. But of course, if your business has to take things in the US or in Canada from Mexico, you are probably suggested that you check this USMCA dispositions that may be canceled, or which of those affect you directly. So you ask your expert to take that into consideration and try to put some clauses that may adapt to the change.
Thank you, Rodrigo. We are close to wrap up, so I don't know if you want to give some words at the end, Rodrigo and Ivan, who is our deputy director. If you want to wrap up and give some words, some advice, and to thank our people connecting.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Rodrigo Marquez and Rodrigo Miranda. And as Robert Kiyosaki says, the risk is not the investment, the risk is in the investor. So it's always good to be educated. And thank you for this information, because it keeps us informed and is pushing us to always be updated with the laws and regulations and everything. And now with these foreign investments and markets, it's impacting everywhere. So whatever happens in the United States or Canada, it's impacting in Mexico. What happened in Mexico, it's impacting the United States. So thank you so much for this valuable information, and let's keep up with the information and be educated, because that will give us success and the security to do business in the right direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Oh, thank you,
Ivan.
everyone. And I think, just wrapping up, the suggestion right now would be, and not because we're trying to soft sell services or anything, but reach out to advisors and actually take some time to understand where you're standing from a foreign trade perspective, and be honest with yourself. If you're absolutely exposed, then you need to start making plans right now. What if my US clients stop buying from me because some crazy tariffs come into effect? I need to find another market. Or what happens if my clients just pretty much stop paying because it's too expensive to buy from me? Then am I going to go and try to litigate? What am I going to do? What's my jurisdiction? Start looking into that, because it's very likely that it's going to happen in the next few months. So it's better to be prepared and be honest with ourselves. And I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I'm just trying to say, just be careful and take some time and maybe invest some in advisory services, so you can have a true picture of where you're standing, so you can actually act before something happens, and not just, you know, wake up and pray that today's not the day. I don't think that's a good approach to anything in business. And if you have that strategic plan and understanding, then you can mitigate the risk. That'll be my conclusion. And thank you again, Global Chamber, and everyone for inviting us for this talk.
Rodrigo Vasquez, you want to wrap up? And
Yeah. Just thank you for all the people that are joining us. And again, if you need anything from Global Chamber or the Forest or any one of us, we will be very gladly to help or assist in anything you may need. And that's it for me. Thank you.
thank you everyone for connecting, and thank you for Global Chamber for the support and for being a global leader supporting companies around the world. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.